Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Butta. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Events with LifeSciences BC, and we are thrilled that you're able to join us today for our webinar, Maximizing Opportunities in Virtual Conferences, presented in partnership with our great friends at Alberta and Biosciences Manitoba. And just a couple of technical things before we get started. We encourage you to participate throughout using the chat function, which you will see on your right-hand side. So please enter any comments or thoughts. Love to hear where people are from, so we'll put some information in there. During the presentations, if you want to see a larger part, so right now you see the screen there, you want to see it in larger details, just click on the 4 arrows on the top right of your screen, and that will allow you to see it full screen. Also, during all of the presentations, if you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A section, and you are also able to upvote. So if you see a question that you'd want to make sure is answered, please click the button there, and that will go to the top. At the end of all of the presentations, we will have a few minutes for Q&A, so I would encourage you to put your questions in there. Our moderator, our President and CEO, Wendy Herbert, she'll be moderating that, so that's always a great thing. We always really like these things to be as interactive as possible, so I encourage you to do that. Once all 4 presentations are done, and after the Q&A, we will go back into the main floor for networking. We will have probably 2 or 3 rounds of 8 minutes each, so we will encourage all of you to participate in that. Also, if you can please sit at the first 5 tables, we like to get those all filled up first, and then go on to tables 6 and 7, just so we've got a nice full group of people participating. If you are moving between tables, you just hover over if there's an empty seat, and you double click on that so that you can sit at that table. When first starting, we recommend everybody just goes around, introduces himself for a minute, give you any thoughts about the presentations, any questions that you have. If you're, especially, there'll be a couple of tables with the speakers there. One thing we would ask, please, is do not move tables until you receive the announcement, which will be every 8 minutes. Just it's a little disruptive for people to move in between. And also, please make sure when you're at the table that you turn your camera and microphone on. Otherwise, people can't see you. So again, very important that you have your camera on and your microphone on when we go back to the networking session. Also, you will see that there are logos for LifeSciences BC and BAM and Bio Alberta, and staff from those organizations will be there, and you're more than welcome to go and visit with them as well. And also, just a reminder, during the presentations, if you have a chance in your account to upload your photo and your social media links so that we can do that. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce the MC moderator for today's webinar, LifeSciences BC President and CEO, Wendy Herbert, who will be taking us through the day. So thank you very much again for attending. I'll look forward to seeing you all during the networking. Over to you, Wendy.
Thanks, Ryan. Welcome, everyone. My name is Wendy Herbert, as Ryan said, and I'm the President and CEO of LifeSciences BC. On behalf of LSBC, Bio Alberta, and the Biosciences Association of Manitoba, we are excited to be hosting this Western Canada Partnership Series. This series is gratefully supported by the Western Economic Diversification Team, so thank you very much for your support. This is the first of a 3-part series bringing together life sciences SMEs from across Western Canada to connect, learn, and network. The Western Canada Partnership, again, is supported by WD, and it's really a first of its kind, and we're really excited to finally be kicking it off. It's taken a lot of planning, and it was a dream that was built up, I think, a number of years ago. One of our biggest barriers of hosting these events historically had been logistics and cost due to travel. So we have COVID to thank for the fact that we've all adopted to this virtual world so successfully, and we can actually bring our 3 provinces together. So there is some silver lining to this new semi-normal that we've been living in. As we begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining this event from within the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. Many of our speakers and many of you are joining us from other traditional and unceded Indigenous territories across this beautiful province and country. LSBC, BioAlberta, BAM are all member-funded not-for-profit organizations supporting the life sciences ecosystem in our respective provinces. We are always welcoming new members, so please reach out to any of us at LSBC, BioAlberta, or BAM for more information about membership. As Ryan mentioned during the networking sessions, we have specific lounges set up for each of our provincial organizations. With that, we're going to move on to the program. Our first speaker is Sasha Mann. We're very fortunate to have Sasha here. She's an incredibly experienced life sciences leader, and we're looking forward to hearing from her. Sasha is focused on building healthcare companies and working on her next startup. She's recently been an entrepreneur in residence at Admari Bioinnovations, a director of Blue Mesa Health, which was acquired by Virgin Pulse, a director of Prescriptive Health, and has been an advisor for various life sciences companies, incubators, and funds. Previously, she was the CEO of Biosciences, a VC-backed clinical stage microbiome company, and led several healthcare investments at Inventages, a global science fund with $1.5 billion. Prior to Inventages, Sasha was an early stage investor focused on innovation, company formation, and investment in the UK, Archangels, and Canada, BDC Capital. Sasha was directly involved in establishing university spin-offs and has experience in both biotech business development, corporate finance, management consulting, and R&D. So welcome, Sasha. Thank you very much for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Wendy. So I'm just going to load up my presentation here. So nice to meet all of you today. Looking forward to the networking. So my talk today is actually going to be very much from the investor perspective in terms of what investors are looking for. And now that we're working in a virtual setting, there's a couple of things to keep in mind as you're fundraising and looking to connect with investors in our new virtual world. So I have a couple of slides here that I'll just talk through to give you some tips. And I think the first thing to kind of set the scene is to understand from the point of view of investors what what their day looks like and what really they're faced with in terms of looking at lots of different opportunities. So investors receive quite a few pitches on an annual basis and really are only investing in a few of those. So from your perspective, you've got to make a very good first impression and really figure out whether you're talking to the right investors before you even meet them. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of way to get around it. There's a lot of work to do offline before you meet these investors. I'm going to walk through how to approach that. And then when you do meet the investors in advance, it's always good, if you can send your pitch ahead of time to really focus on the in-person meetings with questions that they may have, clarifications. A lot of investors do actually do their work before they meet you and are really looking to get a read on you and find out if you and your team are right to build a company. In the virtual format, it's very important, as always, to be very kind of cognizant of the time. So make sure your pitch is very tight, very short. Leave a lot of room for questions, take a lot of notes. And really what you're trying to do at that point is, first of all, figure out what type of feedback you're getting from investors so you can keep iterating your pitch, but also listen very closely to what feedback the investors are giving you in terms of whether you're a fit for their fund, whether your pitch resonates with them, whether there's things you need to change, and if this is an opportunity they want to dig into. So if you can bring someone with you to the pitch that's there just to take notes, that's a really good idea. So what work do you need to do in advance? The first thing is to understand that if you want to raise money, 80% of your time is going to be focused on finding your lead investor. So the lead investor is someone who's going to set the terms for your investment. They'll give you a term sheet, and that will outline basically how they want to invest and on what terms. So your focus primarily is to get a lead investor. If you do meet investors that say once you have a lead in place, they'd like to come in and co-invest, that's okay to talk to those investors, keep them warm, but keep moving on and find your lead investor. The other thing to keep in mind is that there's different types of investors that invest at different stages, and different types of investors that are really appropriate for your company or not appropriate. So you need to understand the dynamics between individuals or angel investors versus family offices, venture capitalists, corporate venture capitalists, or strategic companies, venture debt, and private equity. So there's a whole realm of different possibilities in terms of who can finance your company. And again, you need to find the right investor for the right stage. We talk about pre-seed, seed, Series A. These are all just different rounds of financing. The most important thing I would say for Canadian companies is to find investors, first of all, that are interested in investing in Canadian companies, but also very aligned with what your focus is. So if you're a biotech company, you don't need to talk to, and you shouldn't be pitching to investors that are only investing, for example, in medtech services or diagnostics and not investing in drug development companies. So it's very important to make sure that you're talking to the right investor, and this is part of the work that you need to do before you meet them. So to figure out where you want to start and really prioritize, filter out, and then ultimately contact investors, what you need to do is actually identify the investors and then figure out your game plan by putting all of this into a list. So an Excel list is fine. When you're starting to look at different investors and really to prioritize those that you want to pitch to first, those maybe second. If you know that they're not lead investors, you might want to pitch them later on. It's very important to be very critical as well and to make sure that you talk to your network to find the right investors for you. So if you have done fundraising before, you need to keep in mind it's a very long-term relationship, and so you should get references from your network to find out. So you can talk to other investors, other CEOs of their portfolio companies, your service providers that may know these investors. So once you've identified an investor, there's some information that you need to track. It's very important that they are actually investing in active investors, that their fund has been raised within the last few years, that the size of their fund is appropriate for the amount of money that you need to raise, not only for this round, but for subsequent rounds, how much they like to invest. And it's very important also to understand what deals that they've done that are very specific to and very similar to your company. So it's a good idea to look at their last few investments and find out who specifically at the firm led the deal, how much they invested, who did they co-invest with. The other thing is to remember you only need one lead. So this is kind of like a sales process, and treat it like a sales funnel to really find the right investors to go out to. And then once you have your list prioritized, when you're requesting a meeting with an investor, what's a good idea to do is to have a non-confidential deck, and in the body of your email, really summarize your pitch in 5 bullets. Again, investors don't have a lot of time. They have pitches from a lot of different companies, so you need to be very short with your emails. So we're going to have another speaker talking about the pitch. Here's my my point of view from an investor that's seen thousands of business plans in the decade I spent in venture capital. If you can get your pitch in 10 slides, that's ideal. Make sure it's very logical. My pet peeve is if there wasn't an investment summary as the first slide. So if someone called me up and said, what does this company do? I could immediately go to one slide that told me all of that. Investors are investing in people first. Put the team pretty close to the front of your deck, and then walk through a logical, what's the problem, what's the competition, what's your solution, and really what is the business plan that you're going to build with your company and why you're raising money. So finally, here's a couple of tips for life science companies. I think, we are very data driven. If you can get a non-scientist with fundraising experience to review your pitch, that would be great. Leave a lot of time for questions and present it more as a dialogue or a conversation. I typically say leave half the time, the total time, for questions. And ask the investor questions as well. That's okay. So you say to them, are you a fit for them? and what are the next steps. Then there's some tips here in terms of how to present your slides, data slides. It's very good to have summaries, and that's why a non-scientist going through it will be very helpful. But really, you've got one chance to make a lasting impression. These first meetings are a major decision point for investors, and so keep that in mind when you're pitching to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Lots of really valuable advice, and I'm sure there's going to be questions afterwards. So a reminder to please add questions to the Q&A for Sasha and any of our speakers. Also, you can connect with her after in the networking. Our next speaker is Dawson Reimer. He's been the president of Cerebra Health since 2016. Prior to this, he served as the president and chief operating officer of Medicure Inc., a U.S. hospital-focused specialty pharmaceutical company. Dawson has also worked with Genesis Venture Inc., a life sciences business incubator, where he supported several companies in business development, finance, and product development activities. He has considerable experience serving on corporate and industry boards, including serving as the chair of the LifeSciences Association of Manitoba. Dawson holds a master's degree in economic development from the University of Waterloo and a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Manitoba. Dawson, thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Thanks, Wendy. Appreciate the chance to participate in the program, and hopefully I can add something to it. Giving a presentation on how to give presentations is an intimidating thing. So I think that's my challenge here. And you can see mine okay now?
Yep, it's great. So thanks, Dawson, and you're good to go. Okay.
Yeah, it's even more intimidating giving a presentation on presentations when you're having to do it virtually. So I'm going to give it a go. I am talking about pitching. I'll probably be spending less time on what makes a good pitch. I'll try to weave in a few concepts. We had a little bit of them covered by Sasha on the previous one, but mine is more about the virtual aspects of presenting. Over my, it's like 24 years in the life science industry, I've presented at a lot of conferences, but none more than in 2020. Of course, 2020 was a different year. COVID changed everything for us, and all the conferences were forced to be held virtually. For me, the thing that drove the number of conferences we were presenting in was our participation as one of 50 companies out of over 1,200 applicants that were selected to the MedTech Innovator program. If you don't know about it, it's MedTech Innovator is the world's largest accelerator for medical technologies. Like anything else, it had to be done for the first time virtually last year. The program mentored and trained its cohort on how to refine our businesses and how to pitch them. And that included participation in 4 large conferences, plus presentations within the group to our mentor, as well, our mentors, as well as getting invited to other conferences during the program. And through all of that, they really worked with us and coached us and doing it all virtually, how to adapt to the virtual world. So I have some tips that I learned from this, which I'll be sharing about presenting virtually. So first of all, practice, practice, practice. Regardless whether you're presenting live or whether you're pre-recording, you need to practice while using your technology, giving it a dry run again and again. Hopefully, like Ryan did in this case, someone helps you set up and teaches you how to use the technology. Once you've learned that, you now practice using your technology again and again, clicking through the slides, start to finish, no stopping or fixing anything, while you're sharing your screen and recording yourself so that you can make sure that you know how to maintain a good pace. And one of the weaknesses that I know that I have, and hopefully I'm addressing it right now, is that presenting virtually is harder to maintain your enthusiasm than it is when you're presenting in a live audience, because you can make that human connection. The big challenge in presenting virtually is getting around that. So when you're watching yourself, look for that enthusiasm, try to maintain your energy, and get a coworker or family member to watch to make sure you are. Tip number 2, again, virtual audience struggles with connection. So staying connection is key, and you need to create slides that create that connection. First of all, minimize content. Only include important points and only ones that you're going to speak to. Don't clutter your slides with things that you're not going to be saying or people will not read or listen. If you're sending a summary slide deck to your investors by email, that one can have more language, but the actual presentation isn't something for them to be read. They want to be listening to you. Keep it moving. A virtual presentation demands you hold their attention, so don't take too much time on any one slide, less time than normal in a slide. Use a large font size as well. People often are viewing within a small window. It's harder for them to read along than with a big screen in front of them at a conference. And lastly, tell a story. Biggest critique that I received about Cerebra's pitch was that we didn't have a customer story to connect with the listener at the start of it. We worked it in through the program. It made a huge difference to tell an engaging story about how you solve a problem or how a patient benefited from your technology. And this is critical, especially in virtual presentations. Tip number 3, mind your camera. So here's a picture of my home. I set things up so that I'm looking right into the camera. I've been doing this since I set up here at home. As every TV anchor knows, making eye contact is critical to connecting with the audience. So you need your camera set up so that you'll be looking directly into it at or near eye level and not at an angle. And you'll need to adjust your computer, and this is how I have my 2 screens set up. You also need to adjust your monitor layout so that you will be looking at your camera or at least close to your camera as you read your speaker notes. And this is how I set up my apps. When you're using Microsoft PowerPoint, there'll be a pop-up window that shows your slide notes. I have this on my second screen, while my primary monitor has PowerPoint and presentation full screen mode. And as I'm talking, I'm reading just below the camera so that it looks like I'm looking right at you as I go through it. You should also make sure that if you have other apps that you're going to be sharing, they're right by that spot where you're looking, so you can easily have them open and click through them when it's time to share. Tip 4, pay attention to your lighting. Make sure your face is lit so the camera will pick your face up. If there's too much light in behind, the camera will think that's your face and it'll adjust everything towards it. So you need to have the light around your face. I sit behind a large window and watch the birds outside when I'm talking often, and I also have a light beside my screen so that when it's nighttime, I can still have light on my face. Tip 5, manage your audio. While you're practicing, test to make sure your mic works well, and get a new one if it doesn't. Create yourself a quiet place. That means family intruders or pets should be away while you're presenting. Close unnecessary apps, the things that go bing and give you alerts like are often on our computers or our phones should be turned off or made silent and closed. If you have ambient noise in your room that you can't avoid, then you can actually cancel it. Zoom has new features. They can suppress persistent background noise so that your voice stands out more clearly. If you don't see it in your Zoom app, you may need to update it for the newest version. Tip number 6. Mind your background. You need to create a tidy, uncluttered, undistracting background. I think it's perfectly fine. I noticed a lot of the companies were using their real life home office. It's actually been a fun part of 2020. Just make sure it's tidy and look at what's behind you. It's also okay to use a virtual background. Just keep it professional. There are some neat sites that are out online now that for a few bucks, really a small amount of money, they can create a branded one for your company. So if that interests you, go check that out. And lastly, tip number 7, prepare for Q&A. The goal of all this is connection. So virtual presentations are often dull and impersonal. So when the conference allows, usually it does, there should be time for interaction with the investor audience at the end. If you're using chat or Q&A as a medium for doing that, be very careful as the messages come up that you aren't distracted and wasting your time reading them or stumbling through them. You need to stay clear. And often you'll need to pause or take a little bit more time to read through them as opposed to trying to read while talking through. So that's my presentation. I want to close with a few plugs for the MedTech Innovator Program. It was a fantastic experience. They helped us shape our story, gave us terrific exposure to investors and potential partners. If you're a MedTech company, January 25th is the deadline for 2021. I'd strongly encourage you to give it a shot. Even if you have to apply for a few years, it has incredible value with some great prize money. You can also check out their YouTube channel. If you're a bit disappointed that I didn't talk more about the content of your pitch and delivery of pitch, there's tons of content there, and you can see lots of companies delivering, I'd say, quite professional presentations. One of the presentations shown on the slide there is the president of Sony Television was one of the presenters, and he helped us. He actually gave personal help to us on delivering our pitch. With his help, actually, we were one of the finalists for the best presentation, and it was a really great experience. So that's my plug for them. Thanks for giving me this opportunity, and wish everybody luck in their raising money virtually.
Thanks very much, Dawson. That was an excellent presentation, and I think you effectively summed up in about 8 minutes 11 months of learning of what everybody has tried to figure out on their own. And so I think that was really, really useful advice, and a lot of things that many of us that spend a lot of time on virtual calls and virtual pitches, your advice is spot on. So thank you. Again, please feel free to add questions to the Q&A, or you can connect with Dawson afterwards. Our next speaker is Fareed Farood. Fareed has over a decade of experience both supporting and leading health-focused economic development activities. Most recently, Fareed was the Director of Biopharmaceuticals within Alberta's Ministry of Economic Development and Trade and Tourism, where he was responsible for partnerships, innovation, and overall sector growth for the province's biopharmaceutical and health sector. In his role with the Alberta government, he led the formation of many provincial partnerships between multinational pharmaceutical companies, nonprofits, and the government of Alberta. These partnerships brought innovation-based investments to the province and allowed for multi-partner collaborations between the industrial expertise of pharma companies and Alberta's health innovation expertise to develop the next generation of health solutions. At Global Public Affairs, Fareed is leading the health and life sciences mandates throughout Western Canada, supporting clients on government relations, market entry and access strategy, public policy initiatives around life sciences innovation and adoption. Thank you, Fareed, and I will turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Wendy. Just going to share my presentation here. So I hope everyone can see.
Yeah, you're good.
Great, thanks. So as Wendy said, I've worked a lot in the government, but prior to government, I did actually work in the biotech industry for some time as well. And I attended a lot of conferences and pitches in my time. And as the last two speakers talked about their sort of what to do in the pitch, I'm going to take a look at more on the virtual versus what you would do in a real life event, in attending an event, and what the differences are. Just a quick background on Global. We are a company that is Canada-wide. We're 80 people that have offices from Ontario all the way to BC. As Wendy mentioned, I look after the health and life sciences practice for Global in Western Canada, from Manitoba to BC. I deal with a lot of SMEs, even to my own surprise, on terms of building a company on intellectual property or even their technology or research and collaboration pieces. And some of the comments that I'm going to make throughout my presentation is going to be really on some of the things that has happened in 2020 with some of the SMEs I've dealt with. And one of the things about conferences, especially if you're a new startup and you've never done this before, and a lot of you may have done it, is people forget about why they're attending an event. So if everybody's talking about MedTech or Bio or JP Morgan that's coming up on Monday, why should you go? I think the biggest challenge that I've seen over my experience has been people forget about what the goal and objective of what they are trying to do and why they want to go. And you need to kind of have that bearing in mind. So is it you're trying to go and pitch for investors? Are you trying to find more insights about sort of the competitors or industry trends? Or are you trying to make more awareness about who you are as a company or the products that you have? And whatever is your goal and objective, you need to really be clear upfront as what your expectation is out of that conference, and making sure that that is the right place for you to go. Because if you're not really bought into what am I going to get out of this, then you've wasted a lot of time, maybe resources to do that. Although virtually you're not having to travel, it saves you some money, but it's really good to know what upfront you're going to get value out of. So if but before 2020, if we weren't going to partnering events, you would often meet up with people either in informal settings or in one-on-one partnering, and the beauty of that was that there was some personal touches, and you were able to sort of look at the person in the eye and start talking about who you are, what your company is, what your product is. Didn't matter if it was about it was about partnering or investor pitch. That personal connection is what sometimes actually started the conversation or brought the level of sort of discussion to a point where it was more than just a business transaction. With the virtual way, we've kind of lost that. Even I've hosted lots of webinars and things in the past year, and I have missed the connection with people because the questions are coming through Q&A in the chat box, or you're not seeing the person as they're talking. So the opportunities to connect, even just bump into them at a coffee line, or you're walking down the convention hall and bumping into somebody, that's less and less frequent happening. And so what's happening in the virtual partnering sessions is that it's becoming very targeted, very focused, very short, and you're losing that personal touch. But at the same time, I think there's some opportunities that I've listed here where you now have an opportunity to really have their attention for that allotted amount of time that you're meeting with them. And putting something on audiovisual is almost very helpful. And Dawson, I think, related to this in the last session. Having that AV is very helpful because now you have the opportunity to create it in the background and have it ready to go when the meeting comes up. And the other advantage that's there, maybe because of the cost, maybe because of logistics, maybe because of whatever reason, you couldn't have your whole full team go down to a conference. But now you can bring in different people depending on the nature of the meeting and what you have. You could bring different support people or people in your company that would normally not go to a business conference, but now you could have your scientists nearby where they could answer those kind of difficult questions. And you have more time to prepare your pitch because you don't have to travel, and it costs less to attendees. So because of COVID, maybe there is an advantage, but the biggest drawback, in my opinion, is that in-person relationships that you would have made otherwise. If I look at the how am I going to get there in terms of the conferences that are coming up, a lot of you are probably thinking about Bio. Bio's gone digital for June conference. JP Morgan next week is coming up, and then the MedTech that Dawson just talked about. And we can't emphasize enough, you need to really prepare your value propositions way in advance and knowing what aspect of your company you really want to highlight at each of these conferences, and knowing your value prop and what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and dry run that presentation way in advance of going. And you would do that normally anyways, but I think in the virtual world it's changed because you're expected that you're on and you're going and you're going to go through it smoothly. One thing that I've noticed is I had a client where we were going to pitch to another group for partnership. And we ran into so many difficult technical issues where the connectivity was bad and all of those things. This is the beginning of the pandemic. The biggest thing is do not panic and have some sort of a backup plan. So even if you had a video ready that you could send to them, that you've not wasted their time, or something that and maybe you need to now think about, okay, I had half an hour to prepare. I have now 10 minutes to basically talk. So have secondary plans as you're not losing track of what you're trying to do. So that dry run and preparing for the worst is probably the best advice I could give you, because I've been through it a few times now. And then finally, before going to that, and I think Sasha and Dawson also related to this, try to figure out who's going to be there, and who are the companies that are going to be there, and who are your audience going to be, and who from your team should be attending that. And you could bring a number of different people because now you're in the virtual world. So Whether that's done by adding more people to that partnering session or what have you, it's best to prepare your team for it as well. And there's a little bit of a different opportunity now to do that, where, you know, if it was just a regular partnering session that you went into, maybe it was just you or one other person that could join you. And then, you know, about 30 days before, I would have the emails and everything ready, so that when you begin your outreach, you're not scrambling, and you're ready to go for that event. The couple of other points that I like to make is again, keeping your presentation short and concise. Using audiovisual maybe set you aside from the other 20 presentations that group or those people have seen. Having an agenda. Sometimes we forget as what are we trying to accomplish out of this, and if you can share that agenda with that person ahead of time. I used to do this a lot for government, preparing big meetings with large multinational CEOs and high-profile government officials. Often we had the agendas ready to go probably 2 months or 3 months in advance, and it took a long time to figure that out, because it's important to come out of that meeting with something that you're going to go forward with. Be prepared to answer financial questions, and now you have the opportunity to bring in your CFO or other people on your team. People expect that now. It's you know, maybe you could get back to them later, but being prepared and having those people on standby is probably very critical. And with that, also, what are the team members that you're going to bring in, and who's going to be there with you? Having a quick fact sheet about your company, again, is critical, because it's something that you can share in advance of your presentation with them, so they have it in front of them. You don't have to constantly worry about the technology not working, but there's something in front of them that they could quickly look at. It's almost that one slide that Sasha talked about. The one thing that is my pet peeve with the Canadian companies, especially in Western Canada, is that we often forget we're at a global conference. We tend to think back about what the market in Canada is, especially if you're a medtech company or a new app company or digital company. We gotta put that aside and think about how is this product that we have is going to meet the global need. And think globally, and talk about your product that's going to be launched globally, not just here in Canada. And I have to this day, I have clients that I have to coach and train that, you know, forget about Canada. It's a nice market. I know it's your home, but you got to think globally. And that's what investors and partners are looking for. They're not looking for something that's going to solve your local solution. That's going to be a local solution or a limited market, but they're looking for a large market opportunity. And creating questions and discussions is part of that. So don't make it a one-way presentation where you're doing all the talking for half an hour, and at the end of it, everybody walks away with no sort of a real engagement or discussion. Encourage questions, pause, ask questions, prepare questions about the partner that you're about to meet, so that you have those things prepared in advance and have it written down somewhere in front of you. And then knowing your competitive advantage. Again, in the virtual world, people may shut off the cameras and they're quickly Googling things and they are disputing what you're saying. And a lot of times that happens. So make sure you've done your homework in the background. That's all I had. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Fareed. Our next speaker is Irana Miles. She's the Trade Commissioner for Health and Life Sciences at the Consulate General of Canada in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. Working with entrepreneurs from across Canada, Irana is responsible for the life sciences and digital health sectors in Northern California, including venture capital. Irana works one-on-one with companies looking to navigate the Bay Area ecosystem and leads two of the Consulate's flagship healthcare programs, the Canadian Technology Accelerator for Health and the Canadian Technology Accelerator for Digital Health. She's originally from British Columbia and holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Duke University and a master's degree in dispute resolution from the University of Victoria. She's a volunteer mediator in San Francisco and a member of the board for the San Francisco Commission on the Status of Women. So thank you very much for being here. Irena is a frequent visitor for us with LSBC, and we look forward to you sharing your information with everyone.
Thank you so much, Wendy, and thank you to you and all of the Western Canada Partnership. It's just wonderful to be here, and I will share my screen as we get started. So I really, I've been listening to all the presenters here this morning, and I really would like to talk about some tools and opportunities for everyone in the audience, to think about as you're planning your virtual year in 2021 that could help you to maximize your efforts and really implement the really wonderful guidance that Sasha, Dawson, and Fareed have provided this morning. So I think to start off, so I'm the Trade Commissioner for Health and Life Sciences in San Francisco. I'm part of Global Affairs Canada. And I think the strength in Canada, we're so lucky to have such a broad network across the country. So, this is a map showing our different offices across the provinces. And the strength here is really in the partnerships that we have with organizations like LifeSciences BC, Alberta, and Biosciences of Manitoba, because it's collectively as this group that we, I think, have really shown that we can work strongly together in this virtual year as we shift programming online and switch our services online. Because typically, if you were working with us, you'd be coming into the office, we'd be meeting in person, and helping direct your export strategy, choosing the right markets abroad, really diving into your business. But all of that work can be done virtually. So I think we've seen, in 2020, that we were able to shift quite quickly to be able to support Canadian companies and continue moving forward. So I would encourage you, if you're not already connected to our teams in Canada, to either I can help connect you directly, or any of the provincial partners here that work closely with them can do that as well. And I think the real value there is understanding the opportunities that are happening in each province as conferences go online, as events change, and whether it's in your province specifically or across Canada. And whether or not you're looking at joining an official delegation, or maybe you're attending just on your own, I think it's important to understand too, where we're sponsoring certain events because of the added advantage that you can take. So what I mean by that is, if we're sponsoring something like Toronto Health Innovation Week in April, typically, we would be bringing in, with our international teams, we'd be bringing in buyers, we'd be bringing in VCs. And if you are tapped in early, then there's opportunities for you to access that information, start planning your meetings ahead of time, and get on their meeting lists, as an example. So the other way to work with us is with our teams internationally. So this here is a map of just some of our offices abroad. And I've chosen to put or highlight our teams that are also running the Canadian Technology Accelerator programs. So, it's been, as we've all experienced, I think, a real transition in how we do our work under the pandemic situation. And I would say that the Canadian Technology Accelerator program is one of the most successful programs that we've switched online. So here you can see that we're running this program across the US, in Europe, and in Asia. For life sciences, I would turn your attention to our programs in San Francisco that I run for health and digital health companies, to our team in Boston, and then also to our team in New York. If you're looking, at going international, Berlin is just getting up and running and is going to be focusing on digital health. And then if we're looking at Asia, They're running for digital health programming, but again, it's really speaking with our domestic teams in Canada, understanding the markets, understanding the stage of your business, and where you might see the most success through these programs. So just to give you an example of what we look for, so here in San Francisco, we cast a very wide net across Canada, so you can see the areas of focus that are included down there. And we're really looking for companies that are seeking venture capital, so post-seed to Series A, or partnerships and customers within the next 12 months of joining the program. Typically, we would be running this in person and having companies come in and out of market. But what we've done is switch it to an all virtual online experience, and it's 16 weeks. So it is a time commitment that we ask. So it's something to think about, plan into your year or maybe the next year. And all of the trade commissioners that run these programs are more than happy to talk to you ahead of, actually putting together your application and seeing if it's the right fit for you. And if it's not, that's fine. This is just one way that we work together. But I would also encourage you, to reach out internationally, because if you're thinking about expanding or thinking about finding venture capital or your first client, then it's as I think many of our speakers have said, it's really important to start early, and especially in this virtual time to maintain doing that. Once we get back to meeting in person, there are some costs that are associated with travel, with these meetings, with these conferences. Right now, the CTA health programs, there's no cost to you as a Canadian company to participate. But when we do get back to travel, I just wanted to bring everyone's attention to some funding opportunities that are actually available now for your virtual experiences, and then when you start planning your trips again. So the two most important, or not necessarily most important, but the ones that we see used the most by life sciences companies are CanExport innovation funding. So this is Dawson's going to call me out on this, but this is a bit of a busy slide, and I'll warn you that there's more content coming. So all of this can be viewed online, and I can drop the resources in the chat during our Q&A. But CanExport Innovation is really looking for companies that are establishing an R&D partnership abroad, are looking for foreign partners, and also maybe pursuing VC funding. So you can receive up to $75,000. And here's just a brief example of what a CanExport innovation project could look like. And I'd really draw your attention to the eligibility because there's no requirement for companies to have revenue, which I think is why life sciences companies access this funding the most out of all of our sectors. So in this time of COVID, CanExport has done a really great job in switching funding that can be applied to non-travel expenses. So this is just a brief list of things that you could actually apply for funding that can help you, as you're building out your audio, as you're looking to attend virtual events, as you're, looking at translation or interpretation services abroad, and keeping in mind that this is all in pursuit of a foreign partnership project. So this, I put in here, I think in 2021, we're very hopeful for travel to eventually resume. And just to say that any of these new expenses and activities that have been funded during the COVID time will continue to be funded as well. And then for companies that are a little bit further along, have some revenue behind you, if you're looking at exploring a new market where you currently don't have sales, then this CanExport SME funding could be a great opportunity for you. So again, I think it's important to pay attention to the eligibility requirements here. this type of funding is looking for you to have some revenue behind you. And also, you know, that you're selling where you currently don't have sales. So I think I will leave it there in the time that we have. Please feel free to reach out directly to me. I'm more than happy to talk to you more about Northern California and the work that we do here. And then I've also listed some of the program application reminders and deadlines. So if you are interested in applying for a CTA, this is something to just keep in mind. And I can also put this in the chat feature as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks very much. That was really very useful information. And I want to reiterate that our Global Affairs Canada partners are very interested in working with all of our SMEs across our respective provinces and country. And they really do have some great programs to enable you wherever you happen to, whatever state you happen to be at. So please make sure to reach out to Ariana. Otherwise, each of your provincial organizations, LSBC, BioAlberta, and BAM, we all work very closely with our local representatives and can help connect you to those markets that you may be interested in. So with that, I don't think we've had any Q&A, so I think I'm going to let everyone just move directly into the networking. I want to thank our speakers, Sasha, Dawson, Fareed, and Elena. Also, again, want to thank WD for supporting the Western Canada Partnership Series. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is the first of 3, so I'll give you more information on that. A big thanks to Ryan at LifeSciences BC, Trish at BioAlberta, and Raquel from BAM. There has been a lot of work put into putting this series together, in addition to us coordinating a delegation that went to the MedTech conference last October. So it's been great to see a collaboration across Western Canada, and I think it's been providing a lot of value to many of our SMEs. We have some upcoming events that we always like to share with people, and as has been talked about many times in the world of virtual business, these events that are typically in person in the past are all virtual, so they're open to anybody. As most people know, the JP Morgan conference is next week. Good luck with that for those that are going. We, LSBC, are hosting an event with Gardner next week, which is a part of their speaker series, their public lecture series. You can find information about that either from us directly or on our website. We are also hosting our 2nd annual Career Connect Day presented by BioTalent Canada on January 22nd. This is an opportunity where we profile careers in life sciences and try and connect both companies and prospective employees targeted specifically in the life sciences sector. February will be the 2nd of our partnership series, Preparing the Perfect Pitch Deck. We also have the LSBC Access to Innovation. And then in March, our 3rd of the Western Canada Partnership Series is Access Funding to Succeed. And then we'll have a showcase series in Victoria. So hope to see any of you at any of those events. Again, one of the keys of this partnership is to bring SMEs and life sciences leaders from across British Columbia, Alberta, and Manitoba to connect, learn, and meet. So we're going to move on to networking. I hope you take the opportunity to both reconnect with people that you know and also meet some of your fellow SMEs and leaders. A reminder of a couple of tips on the networking. I know we've all been in multiple virtual platforms and they're all a little bit different. So Remo, which we're using, as you would have seen when you arrive, you can pick a table by double-clicking on a virtual seat. You can see who's at the table by either hovering over the picture and their name will show up, or if the person hasn't uploaded their photo, you'll just see their first initial. When you move to a table, please be sure to turn on your camera and your mic, and then you will be virtually at the table with those leaders. If you're at a table by yourself, please make sure you move to another table where you're going to meet some people. Again, we have lounges set up for each of the provincial organizations if you want to connect with any of us. And enjoy yourself and have fun. So with that, Ryan, I'll let you turn us all back into the main room for the networking. Thank you very much, everyone.